Dating back to the 19th century, even beyond those dates, have been evidence of transgender people. However, at the time, the term transgender was not used, and it was not yet described as being born as the wrong gender. Native Americans often called themselves two-spirits if they had felt as if they had masculine and feminine identities. Two-spirit people were often looked up to as gods. A well-known Native American two-spirit, Weewa, was born a male and lived as a woman. Weewa was often written about by anthologist Matilda Cox Stevenson, which resulted in Weewa being able to meet President Cleveland in the White House with Stevenson. As a decade passed into the Civil War era, it was known for women to dress as men to serve as soldiers. A particularly well-known person who continued to dress as a male for many years after the war, Albert Cashier, who was born female, was discovered to have female anatomy, which led to his life being forced into asylum and had to wear feminine clothing. As the 20th century approached, documentation of transgender people was available. In 1917, Reed Erickson is born and soon discovered he is a trans man and becomes a patient for Harry Benjamin, an endocrinologist, in 1963. After Erickson's transition, he was philanthropically involved with the trans community and helped with the funds for the book Transsexual Phenomenon. Throughout World War I, Harry Benjamin, who worked in New York as an endocrinologist, was known to work with nearly 1,500 transgender patients. Benjamin was seen as a radical man for his time and was considered the founding father of contemporary Western transsexualism, and in 1966 published a Transsexual Phenomenon. Throughout these findings and studies, a transgender woman who made changes in the trans history was known as George Jorgensen and is currently known as Christine Jorgensen, transformed after returning from World War II. In 1952, Jorgensen underwent genital surgery in Denmark, performed by Dr. Paul Fogh Andersen. Following this time was known as the Jorgensen era. In 1965, David Reimer is born. While during circumcision, Reimer's penis is damaged, which resulted in him losing his penis. To avoid troubles, Reimer's parents took the advice of psychologist Dr. John Money at Johns Hopkins University Gender Identity Clinic to raise David as Brenda. Throughout adolescence, Reimer remembers to have reverted to his living as a boy, which he had always felt he was. This then led to the nature versus nurture debate. In 1973, Tina Renee Brandon was born, and through adolescence then identified as male as Brandon Tina. In 1993, Tina met 19-year-old Lana Tisdale, and soon associated with ex-convicts John L. Lauder and Tom Nissen, who ended up sexually assaulting and gang raping Tina, then ultimately ended up in murdering him on December 31st, 1993. These horrific events were then made into the film Boys Don't Cry. From 2012 onward to our present years, transgender hate crime and death has risen each year, especially for trans women of color.
I think one of the scariest things when I transitioned was understanding that people would hate me for who I am. It's not that we are trying to be anything other than ourselves. We're not trying to fake who we are. We're not trying to defy God. We're simply living our truths. And I think it's heartbreaking that anyone would hate anyone for living authentically.
Think about if you had a lack of resources or a lack of understanding, or people who can even just advocate for you just because they don't even know like what your identity is or care to know.
Stereotypes become the only message that folks are hearing. These ideas are actually really dangerous, and they're putting our communities in positions where we're being denied very basic fundamental rights, or we're literally being murdered.
Marriage equality was a huge human rights victory for the LGBT community. But at the same time, The transgender community is still legally discriminated against in 2/3 of the states in housing, employment, health care, and access to public space. And the organizations that have been serving them on the ground have been telling us that there's an epidemic of violence.
I'm a black trans woman of color in Los Angeles. I mean, people would clock you, they would catcall you.
Mm-hmm.
It's really dangerous.
Yeah. I grew up in cities that were, I was like beat up or had a gun held on me, or, like there was just a lot of violence growing up as a gender non-conforming person. That has not changed.
The story of transgender lives is undertold because there's no data. I wanted to use the power of eyewitness video to show the scale of abuse. There are videos out there of violent acts against trans people that are being captured, shared, and engaged with as entertainment. They're being viewed in the millions, they're being liked, they're being commented on in hateful ways. We were able to take perpetrator videos and turn them into a tool for advocacy, a report and video we call Capturing Hate.
When I was looking at the Capturing Hate, the video and the report, just the numbers,
Yeah.
I feel like we got to get this stuff out to people so people can see and just experience what it's like.
Witness is taking the lead by bringing to the table the technology companies, activists, advocacy organizations to change policy. The report's already being used by attorneys, but the biggest impact is that we invented a way, an accessible way, for marginalized communities to cull data from eyewitness video. Because being uncounted means being overlooked.
As much as we can counter negative messages with efforts to just help folks to understand the full scope of who we are and how we want to exist and how we want to manifest in the world is absolutely something that we need to be celebrating every single day as far as I'm concerned.
However, as we begin to look towards other countries, it is obvious to take note that these rates have skyrocketed. One country in particular, with a long list of transgender death and violence, is Brazil. Although Brazil is very open about fighting for equal rights and passionate about it, death rates continue to rise.
I'm Carter. I'm 15 and a half, and I use he, him, or they, them pronouns. Go.
My name is Sam. I'm 15 and I use he, him pronouns.
Hello, my name is Jude. I'm 19 and my pronouns are they, them.
Go.
Alright. Hi, I'm Celeste Chase. I'm 18 years old, I think. And I am a transgender woman and I go by she, her pronouns.
I haven't really experienced anything directly like towards myself, but like I've been around people who have like talked like really bad things about like trans people and like the whole like trans like community, I guess. And yeah.
I've been almost beaten up in bathrooms. I've experienced verbal hate and I've yet to experience physical, like full-on physical hate.
So I've experienced mostly misunderstanding of my identity through people misgendering me or using the wrong pronouns even though I've told them otherwise, and using the wrong name, and also just generally people thinking or just telling me that it's like a choice to be trans.
So there's been many things. So I've been called names by kids at school before, going so far as to call me the he woman, There's also been numerous amounts of physical abuse from my stepdad when he was still around. And just a general, like, just being told I'm not allowed to be who I want to be.
At school, I also hear like a lot of like people kind of like making fun of like the trans community and like saying they're like attack helicopters or whatever, which like isn't funny. And online I see a lot of like hate towards trans people because online they have like more of a voice without consequences, I guess, and they can say a lot worse things. That didn't make sense.
I get more verbal hate online than I do in real life, probably because I'm never outside. A lot of people will say that I'm not a real human being, or that I'm not valid, or like I'm against God's plan, or that, you know, I'm not actually male, or things like that. A lot towards other people, it's been very violent too.
So I mostly see acts of hate online because it's easier for them to hate other people online because they don't know them, and just generally like not acknowledging them in their identity.
I haven't really seen any at school because I don't really run into any out trans people or anyone of that sort. I mean, like, I've seen some people be very, like, discriminatory towards those who are gender non-conforming, which I've been there to help them out and defend them. I had quite a few friends who were like that, just thinking, like, people are just not supposed to be able to be in between, you know? Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
In 2014, there was only 13 killings, and as of 2015, it was 22, 2016, 23, and 2017, 25. And about 80% of these people in 2017 were trans women of color, and 75% were under the age of 35.
Because more people have come out to say that they are trans and to accept themselves, and a lot of people in the world have yet to accept that and think that it's okay, that let's just remove these people from the earth or kill them because, you know, we're all ignorant.
I think it's risen because there's been like a rising population of trans people because they've like felt more comfortable to come out and like have had the words to like come out themselves, and so there's more people to like hate on and like do mean stuff too.
I think that they've risen because there's a lot more trans people out there that are coming out, and also I think people are getting more they're more comfortable with sharing their own opinion, whether that's for or against trans people.
Probably because we live in a heavily transphobic society, from our government to people out there who just don't want to accept that there are different things out there, that they can't just stay in their little bubbles of comfort, that people aren't allowed to express who they want to be. We're in a very strict society of you gotta conform to this way, be this way, and not be able to think for yourself.
I feel like if we just get more information out there and have people be able to understand us more, then there'll be a lot less.
Change people's views on things, change how we teach education in terms of like gender and like issues relating to societal norms, like make it so that there are no societal norms regarding gender. Like, say, like clothing. Clothing's just clothing. It doesn't have gender. Pronouns are just pronouns. Like, it really just, it's a lot of a matter of perspective, and we just need to change the perspective from other people's points.
I think just educating yourself continuously and realizing that just because someone has a different identity than you doesn't mean that it still means they're a person.
Realize that murder is not a solution, nor is it okay. Neither is rape, because there's a lot of trans raping too, which is awful. For people to just generally start to realize that everybody is equal and everybody should be treated with the same amount of respect and love, and we are all our own amazing people and we're all the same. Just some of us are different than others, but that doesn't mean that we deserve to be killed.
You gotta just keep pushing forward. Like, life hasn't always, it isn't always going to be so kind, but the thing that matters is that you get back up again no matter how many times you get knocked down. And help out those you can.
Don't rush your identity, because your identity isn't exactly, it's not something that needs to be clarified. A lot of people use labels because it enables them to be able to stick with a group of people or a word that can help other people, but if you don't know what you are, then you can just be you, and that's more important than identifying yourself.
I think that there's gonna be people that accept you somewhere out there, even though it might not seem like it, and it might take a while for you to find those people, but there's always accepting people out there, and you're gonna find them someday.
I guess it's kind of just like be yourself, and if there's people out there that don't accept that, just like drop them.